So I'm at this event and we were playing games, and one of the things were, let's talk about our relationship status and then we can ask questions. Bet. Okay, mind you, I knew about half of the people that were there. So
Okay.
not everybody knows, we have a podcast or whatever, and I was by myself. But it was interesting because we really had a dynamic group of people. We had some people from 18 all the way up to their 50s.
Mm. Yeah, that's a
So
big group.
we had young people who are some single, some dating. We had um, people in their 30s and 40s who are married, some divorced, some single. Um, and we ran around the table and we talked about like where we are as far as relationship goes. And I, of course, asked everybody questions because, I'm like, yes, let's find out more. Let's talk, let's learn. It was a really insightful thing. But, um, it was interesting to really hear kind of the perspective of people. And I say that because there were two single people there. One was a little older, has a
Mhm.
child, and another one was young, like 19.
Right.
And, one of the things they said was they don't have time for a relationship. So I then asked myself, is it a matter of you don't view this as something that you important,
Mhm. Mhm.
or are you actually just consuming yourself with other things and then this just doesn't make it onto the list? Or is it an excuse to not go through the trouble of dating?
Wow.
Because the way I see it, and it's always easier for someone who's been married for 40 years, is you make time for what you want to make time for. So if you wanted to date and make time for dating, you would. I don't think work or other things would be an excuse. Maybe. I don't want to be closed minded about this, but this is why I'm talking about it now.
Yeah.
Because the way I see it is you make time for what you want to make time for. If you're choosing not to date or choosing to be celibate or choosing to whatever, that's fine. No judgment. But when people say they don't have time for a relationship, like what does that actually mean?
Yeah, well, to me, it screams fear. It screams, "I don't wanna put my heart out there and be hurt
Yeah,
behind nonsense that definitely could have been avoided."
right,
And I appreciate that because you know what I'm saying, hurt people. So trying to avoid that altogether it does make sense to me theoretically.
right,
But you never wanna just pro tip, you never wanna lead from a place of fear, being scared of a thing or being scared of an outcome, because if you do, you end up just getting stuck in the mud almost and end up uh being stuck where you are from a relationship and emotional perspective. You
yeah,
understand what I'm saying?
yeah,
So yeah, I my brain really does always lead to that's a fear statement and it's a fear-based statement. I can't speak for every single person, obviously, but if I was to guess in the majority, it'd probably be a fear-based thing.
a fear based thing. Yeah, and I agree. And I think even often in relationships, you get into these cycles where, you know, well, I'm so busy at work, I don't have time for blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you have time. Right? Or you make time for what you want to make time for, but I think it's an easy way out of
Yeah.
something for whatever reason,
Mm.
right? It's an easy way out. And so I agree with you. I think there's a lot of fear there. Um, I think that you sometimes just can't be open with the thought of, no, I don't want to date right now. Because it's like, well, why don't you want to date? Is something wrong with you? Are you asexual? And it's like, no, it's not about that. It's like I'm making a choice in my life to not date. And I think that should be okay. And that may be fear based too, but it was interesting to hear that two of the single people in the room, meaning single as they weren't married or whatever, that was kind of what they said. And so
Uh-huh.
You fast forward um, to young people that we're dating, and they're early 20s, and I'm like, how do you know that you want to be committed at 20? Or do you know that you want to be committed at 20? You know what I'm saying? Because they were together, they were committed to each other, and they're about a year into this, and it's like, what would I tell my 20-year-old self at that time? Like, I look at them and I'm like, y'all have no idea what you're doing, right? But okay, none of us did at that point. That this is how you kind of gain the experience of
Exactly.
making that choice to be with someone looks like every day. It is going through those relationships, even if you think, oh my God, I'm so in love.
Yeah. It's kind of the realization after you've been through that whole thing and that whole process that kind of gets you to say that you actually were or you might have been infatuated. But while you're there, it's hard to see the forest for the trees. It really does feel like this person is the one. In our case, it kind of worked out that way, but I can admit that that's not necessarily everybody always just because
Yeah.
it's not a circumstantial thing. It's a work thing.
Yeah.
We put the work in, and
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
we have the results we have.
Yeah. And it really makes me think, because a lot of the time, it sounds like, hey, we're spitting all this knowledge and we know this and we've been married 14 years and we this and we that. But that moment really made me sit back and think that you cannot forget where you came from.
Mm,
Right? Okay, we're 14 years into this marriage, not talking about even the relationship part,
facts.
but we weren't always like that. We didn't always know the things that we know now. There was a lot of trial and error, and there was a lot of disagreements, and and not even so much that we fought all the time, but
We miscommunicated
we
often.
miscommunicated so much.
Often, and wasn't even that we weren't trying to communicate. That was the hard part. It wasn't that we weren't trying to communicate back and we're like sitting in front of each other, eyes wide open, saying words and hearing other words that were never said. It's weird, but that happened a lot. We didn't argue much, but that miscommunication just was
Yep,
going different directions. That happened all the time.
yep,
Yeah. One
yep,
of the things that for us, I think happened a lot was we ended up saying the same thing, but we said it so differently and we came from it from two different perspectives so much that we end up arguing about the perspective, even though we both landed on the same
it's
answer.
very true.
And then one day we just had to be like, wait, 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 wait. I think we're saying the same thing.
It's very true. He often say that.
No, we're saying the same thing. Cool. Moving on.
I'm like, "No, we're not. We're not saying the same thing." He's like, "Yes, we
Yeah,
absolutely are
I think we're
saying the
saying the
same
same
thing.
thing.
Here's what you're saying. Here's what I'm saying. We agree on that part." Um,
Cool. So as long as we agree on that part. But it also makes me appreciate the fact that we come at it from two different perspectives because it allows me to see other perspectives.
yeah,
I'm the type of very super logical guy that if it's not pragmatic, if it's not logical, if it's not, then not that it has less value, but it's more like, okay, well, but there's the answer right there, straight ahead. So why are we going back just around the willow bend and over the mountain and through the woods again? But that straight ahead path could be a lot more dangerous than I might think. And so making sure that we keep other aspects in mind about it allows us to really see the world from a different perspective. And that's a really, really, really super good thing in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
One of the things that was said there, and I often hear women say a lot, was, "Don't think men aren't emotional. Men are very emotional. They're even more emotional than us." And I don't think men are not emotional. I just struggle to see. I struggle with that statement. So help me understand,
Okay. Yeah. Why do you struggle with that statement?
because I don't see you necessarily as emotional. I do think that you have emotions. I don't think that your decisions and your choices are driven by emotion.
No, I'm not. I personally am not a person who's driven by emotion. However, I do agree that especially these days, men are emotional.
So, what does an emotional man look like?
I think he just looks like a person, like a human. It's just not we're so used to seeing the stoic male figure that stands as a rock in front of all turmoil. And we're just now seeing men as humans that are capable of having higher emotions than just anger and horny and sleepy. It's true. So like what's happening right now in the social media world is what's called the drizzle drizzle movement. Have you heard of this?
Mm-mm.
It's the Drizzle Drizzle movement. We're gonna it's hilarious. So, like a few years ago, there was this girl on TikTok, this grown woman, not girl. I don't remember her name. I'm not gonna give her any big ups on the platform because I don't believe in anything she's saying. But she has a lot of followers, and her whole point is sprinkle, sprinkle. And her thought process behind that is, I can get a man to do whatever I want him to do, and we're here to take advantage of men as much as we can. That's when the whole you taking me to a date to Cheesecake Factory? Oh my god, that's terrible. That's that whole thought process, right? But in answer to that movement, now they have the Drizzle Drizzle movement, which is just men mocking that other movement. And so men are like, this is our first date. What do you mean you're not taking me to Foot Locker to buy me the newest pair of Jordans? What are you broke? If you're just broke, say that. 'Cause they're answering women who are saying, "Well, what you can't take me to a $350 dinner on our first date. If you're broke, just say that. It's giving broke. It's giving broke." They're just taking the same thing and flipping it on its head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All of that to say, the whole reason why, especially men, never understood the sprinkle sprinkle movement was because it talked about men as if men were just a thing to be used, a utility.
Hmm.
And when you talk about people in terms of that, a utility doesn't have emotions.
Right.
It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't
Yeah.
have power and autonomy and choice and humanity. And part of what is getting women, especially the ones who really believed in this whole sprinkle sprinkle thing, is that when they hear the same arguments that they were making back at them from the other perspective, it's so jarring to them that they're like, this doesn't make any sense. This is why we can't deal with men. And men are going, we're just saying the same thing you said. If it's ridiculous when we say it, you think it's any less ridiculous when you say it?
Hmm.
And so that whole roundabout way of answering the question about men and emotions, yeah, men are just people that we really haven't given who was it? It was Keisha Cole. Keisha Cole. And she was just like, yeah, my man cried in front of me and he should have the room to cry in front of his woman, but I gotta tell you that for me, it turned me all the way off. And so men aren't just allowed to have a range of emotions because the minute we do, even though we say this is what we want, the minute we do, men are generally kind of punished for it one way or another. So I think that yes, men are emotional, but I also think, especially from a masculine perspective, he has a lot of reason not to behave that way.
Mm.
And as we always say on the show, if you don't talk it out, you'll act it out. So I think that's also why we have a whole lot of men who are emotionally unavailable or inconsistent and who end up acting it out.
Okay, so if a man had his way
Mm.
without judgment, what would an emotion acted out look like?
An emotion acted out looks like I don't feel empowered when I get home. My woman nags. She complains incessantly. Nothing I ever do is right. So I cheated on her because it made me feel better.
Mm. And so a lot of the time, I think that your emotions as a man acted out is deemed unfavorable by society
Right. Absolutely.
100%. So if you cry,
Yeah.
you're a bitch. If
Yep.
you cheat, you're weak.
I'm a
If
dog.
you're this,
Yep.
you're that. And I'm not saying that some of them aren't unfavorable, but I think what you're trying to say is that an emotional man has been suppressed for so long that any type of emotion is
Big.
usually big and therefore unfavorable
Yeah, therefore
when it comes
unfavorable.
for the
Right.
in the aspect of a man. And
Exactly.
so I think this is why we're kind of running into women who either want their man to be more emotional or show more emotion, or we have these big explosion or unfavorable reactions from men that's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What the heck is wrong with
Yeah,
you?
what's going on?
You
Like,
have no self-control, you have no kind of respect, you have nothing. Like, what is wrong? And so it kind of, I guess, puts it in a box.
yeah, it puts it in a box. But the thing is, those type of mental boxes aren't. You can't compartmentalize yourself out of a lifetime
Yeah.
of of the trauma or stress. It's going to come out.
And that's the thing, it needs to come out in a healthy way.
Yes,
But if you've suppressed it for so long, there's no way it's gonna ever be healthy. I mean, it's just like anything, right? If you kept bread in a box for however long, eventually it'll mold. Right. But you make bread to eat.
if
So
you made right. So if you're not gonna eat it,
replacing the bread, you'd always have healthy bread or good bread in the box.
facts.
But if you kept the same old bread, eventually it'll mold and you couldn't eat it anymore. And I think that is the part where we get hung up with men's emotions is, it's trapped in this box, and a lot of men don't have the space to necessarily get it out in a
Mm.
healthy way, or are never taught to get it out in a
That's the
healthy
one.
way.
That's the one.
And
We
so when
have,
it comes out not good. And
yeah.
that's when I think you get the negative reactions from us.
Yes, yes. On some level, yes, I definitely agree with that. Because I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for men to express themselves. However, a man expressing himself is tantamount to a nerd getting mocked. A very self-assured Steve Urkel style nerd getting mocked in school. It
Mhm.
still hurts.
Mhm.
He's just gonna still do him.
Mhm.
Steve never stopped being Steve. He just experimented with what that looked like.
Mhm.
But he never stopped being himself. In the same way, a self assured man who's emotionally stable and healthy within himself is not going to stop being that because he's
Mhm.
ridiculed, but he will still be ridiculed. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It really makes sense. I mean, I look at you as like a leader and like a man who, has self-control and all of these things. I expect you to have your shit together
All times.
at all times.
Yeah.
Like, not okay, I'm not saying that
Days off.
Nadia Nadia understands that he has emotion and he has things he deals with. I get that. But as a woman looking for a man to be a leader of her home or to be a partner or whatever, I'm expecting them to have it together.
Yeah, I get that.
Like, when he stops and tells me, "Look, babe, I'm feeling these things." I'm like, "Right." Because why wouldn't you? I totally understand where you're coming from, but I don't even think about it sometimes until he sits me down and he's like, "No, this is what I'm feeling. This is not anything you're doing or not doing. This is me." And
Me.
even though obviously it affects you and you're a part of this because we're in a relationship, I want you to understand what I'm feeling. And I have to make sure that I'm not making it about me necessarily, because what he's trying to tell me is this is where I'm coming from. And I know it affects you, and this is how it affects you, and this is the things that I've even and there's no way for it not to affect me, right? And me not to affect him. But you have to really like take a step. I have to really learn how to take a step back and be like, okay, no, 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 don't personalize this right now. Just listen as he gets it out, because he needs to get it out, and you want him to get it out in a healthy way, obviously.
Facts.
But I feel oftentimes we, not even only men, but a lot of time we're not given that space to get it out in a
First
healthy
off,
way.
as black people on the whole,
Let's start there.
the rest of the world don't want us to say shit. Let's just keep that a
We
buck.
can't,
We can't say nothing. We can't get angry. We
yeah,
can't wear hoodies or buy Skittles. We can't sleep in our cars, in our
can't
homes.
stand on the side.
Can't stand on the sidewalk. Can't stand inside, outside. Can't go to work.
Yeah,
Can't drive while black. Can't do nothing. We can't do nothing without somebody being offended at the fact that we exist.
facts,
The last thing we need is to come home to each other and treat each other that way.
facts.
But it is so permeated into our culture, into our system, into our way of being, especially as Americans, that we sometimes inevitably come home and treat each other like the outside world treats us. And that is not a good thing. So, fellas, boys especially who are of age to start really dating and taking this thing seriously, what she just said was gold. If your woman isn't on that track, she might not say that because as she told these people, 14 years in, you can't just take my advice 14 years in because it came with a lot of work and came with a lot of things that adds a lot of context to why her stance is the way it is. But if your woman isn't saying this something along that path, like you do have a space, but don't just say you do actually have the space. If she's not providing that, bro, one, two, three, not it.
But you bring up a good point, baby, about even just being black people. I feel like we walk around on edge.
Yeah.
Like we
Facts.
always are walking around with, okay, who's looking, who's, whatever the case may be. And I think naturally that's ingrained in us, right?
Mm.
So you ask yourself, do you have a place? Men, women, do you really have a space and a place where you can be your authentic self?
That is a good question. And when you ask men about being emotional,
That
no,
includes it, right?
no,
I
no,
mean,
because
I know that a lot of people
even
feel
among manly spaces, too much emotionality will take away from the leadership aspects that most men and men's groups and men's thought processes are trying to get to. I heard it said that therapy doesn't work as well for every type of man specifically because not every problem for a man can be solved by feeling better about it. Sometimes men need to be bolstered and encouraged and uplifted in their leadership so that they can take control of their self and their problems and issues.
it's about like being proactive
Yes,
about the problem.
it's not about feeling good about it. You can
It's
feel good after we've solved the problem, but
it, yeah,
we're not going to feel good until the problem's solved. So feeling good about it is a relative thing unless there's something that you can't change.
it's the difference between expecting there to be a space that you can be your authentic self and learning how to create that space.
Ooh, that's good.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
And
good.
that I think that's what we need to teach our children.
Yeah, well, we need to teach ourselves first
Oh yeah.
so that we can teach our children.
Now that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is we're all of us have gone through the stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, I got this nice, beautiful house. I got a nice car, and I still don't feel safe.
I-
So what is the problem? We don't
yeah.
know how to create those safe spaces for ourselves, right? And so I think, yeah, we got to do that for ourselves. True,
But we have
but
to do that for
some people
ourselves.
do that.
But that's why we have to figure it out for ourselves so that when our
Mhm.
kids go,
That part,
Mom, Dad, I just don't know. I feel like everything's falling apart. We can go, it's okay.
right,
We got you.
right.
But here's the
Here's the things
reality
that you need
that you need
to
to
do.
know
Right.
so
And we
that
talk about this all the time. We use a lot of this method with our daughter. Instead of saying, no, 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 you're safe, you're fine, or if she's like, oh, I don't think I'm pretty. Oh, no, don't say that. You're beautiful. Okay, right. Yes. But here's the problem. She still has to deal with the feeling, whether we agree with it or not. So, how do we help her deal with the feeling of not feeling pretty
yeah.
instead of just telling her, don't say that you're pretty? Do you see them?
Mhm.
So, when she's in those moments again, which will happen,
Right.
she knows what to do with it. She
That's
knows where to place it. It's
look,
kind of the same.
I've taught a lot of kids because I teach vocal lessons and piano lessons. I teach music. I've done it independently for years. The greatest feeling I have when I'm teaching my students is when they come back to me and they said they had a moment. It always happens with all my students. They have a moment where
Coach C,
something's
Tiffany.
it's true. That's exactly how it happens. Somebody says they run inside their lesson, go see, what happened? Well, okay, what's going on? I had a performance over the weekend. Okay, how'd it go? It didn't go so good. But what happened? I started to go down, I started to go flat, and I started to feel really terrible about myself. And then I heard your voice in the back of my head going, hey, if you mess this up, don't tell nobody I'm your teacher because I know how to do this right. So get it right. Let's go. Come on. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
That's
Let's
really how he
go.
says it.
And then the student will be like, and then I picked it up and then I did it. And I felt so good. And they're so excited. They're excited because yeah, I have to reinforce it so that in the moments when I'm not there and you don't have the support,
That part.
you hear it ringing
That
back
part.
in your head, you hear it ringing back in your mind, you can recall it.
That
The
part.
Bible says, train up a child in the way you should go. And I think this is the type of training that they meant so that when they're old, they don't depart from it. The point is, those type of teachings will stick with you if you allow them to, if you
Yeah.
let it plant into your spirit and let it plant into your soul. When you get to those moments when you really need to call on it, you'll hear the proper
Yeah.
voice. That I believe is also how God talks to us.
Yes.
The God talks to us in a still small voice, and because he don't need no other clatter around it, he's God. You understand what I'm saying? So if we're taking our time spiritually, it happens the same way. We'll just hear a small voice that says boom, boom, boom,
Mhm.
and it's your job to follow direction. Same thing
Same
here.
thing
We have
here.
to learn these things
We
for
have to learn these
ourselves
things for ourselves.
so
Yeah.
that we can turn around and teach our children, hey, what you're going through is normal. Calm down. And then when you gather yourself, this is how you go forward with that. If they can't come with you, they can't come with you, but you can still move forward.
It feels, babe, like, um, when you say, we have to teach, we have to learn these things for ourselves. I know for a person like me and for a lot of people, you can relate to this. It feels easier when I have someone there. And I think a lot of the time when we are working through these things, it can get messy with the other
Mm.
person because I want you there, but I'm learning how to manage my emotions so you're the person I explode on.
Yeah, that part.
Now you feel disrespected and you feel, you know, all kinds of things which you should. And I'm like, but but I so
Yeah.
it's I say that to say sometimes it's really hard to do this by yourself. And you want that person there, but they end up getting the brunt
Yeah.
of
Your healing
your
process.
work, for lack of better word,
Yeah.
which ends up pushing them away,
Hey.
which makes you sometimes feel like a failure and like, dang, if I only did this and I only did that. So I say all to say that this is where the work comes in, right? Because as we're learning this for ourselves, we're gonna mess up. He's learned as a man, you don't cry, you don't show emotion, you don't do these things. Um, and so in learning how to do that, like
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't look pretty
Yeah.
is the
No.
point.
No.
And I think we don't talk about the parts that don't look pretty.
Well,
And
we no, I
so
think we do, but we talk about them in terms of the situation. We talk about it in terms of violence, or we talk about it in like, for example, if a man loses his cool, he's probably going to get angry. Now, look at me. I'm a black man. If I get angry, I now fall into the stereotype of an angry black
black man,
man.
which
Now,
is violent
right.
and
So
and
and
scary.
scary because just because I exist now if I turn around and lose control and punch a hole in the wall, we're going to talk about how I need anger management. What we're not going to talk about is how I'm traumatized and how it came out in me hitting the wall. That's for me to deal with in therapy, but I'm going to have to deal with that in therapy while being chastised everywhere else.
Mhm,
So there's a part of me that knows that I don't have the room
mhm.
to lose control, even if I wanted to, even if it wasn't
You
that
have to live a
big of
perfect life.
right, even if my outburst isn't that big, it can still result in that, you know, results being that big. So that's the tough part, but it is also just a part of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's why, that's why I asked the question because I often hear women say, I wish my man was showed more emotion and was emotional. And I'm like, well, do we truly understand what that looks like from the aspect of a woman being emotional? And from the aspect of a
Of a
man
man
being
being
emotional.
emotional.
Women are naturally, we got hormones and we're crying all the time. I was just in a whole fit of rage a few weeks ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, everybody just stopped talking. And everybody thought I was mad at them and upset. And I'm like, I just PMS, y'all, PMS. Like, help me. And, but that did require a lot of conversation with people. Starting with him, like, hey, babe, this is what I'm feeling, that I don't like it, tears, all of that, because unfortunately he gets it. He gets the brunt of a lot of that because he's with me. We live together, but it ended up being conversations with a lot of other people too. And it's frustrating because you want to just say, oh my gosh, can I just be me? Do I have to explain
Everything.
my rolling the eyes and my frustrations and my constant headaches? Do I have to explain it all? And so it gets tricky because a lot of this, you do need people to do it and help you through and work with. And
Mhm.
but those same people are the ones that you have to take time to explain it. And that's why I think a lot of people kind of suppress
Yeah.
their feelings and emotions because it's work.
Yeah, it's work.
Sometimes you don't want to do all of that.
Yeah, and but it's the type of work that doesn't just go away. It's the type of work that keeps coming back. Let me tell you something that
Yeah, facts.
when we first got married, one of the hardest things for me to reconcile with was we just talked about this. Why do we have to talk about it
Yeah.
again and again and again? Because like from a man's perspective, if I'm on like a football team, if I'm the quarterback, I don't want to have to tell you to play 7 times. That's 6 times too many. You feel me? You feel what I'm saying? I don't have the time. There's a 340-pound big dude that's running toward me that's trying to steal this ball and will murder me for it. So I don't have time to tell you this 7 times. I'm gonna tell you this once, and if you don't get it, get off the field. That's how we think about basically everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You feel me? So the thought process of having to have an emotional conversation, which I already don't want to do, and having to have it over and over and over and be reassuring and reassuring and reassuring and reassuring myself, and it's exhausting.
Do you think though that that's what suppression looks like for you
I don't know
when
about
it comes to emotion?
I don't know about suppression, but definitely one of those. It's where my nature and what is necessary for the situation buck heads. My nature is I just want to say this once and move forward with what we all know we need to do. But the situation calls for a lot more emotional intelligence than that, a lot more tact than that. So what I need to do is now I need to preference not what I want to happen, but what I know is best for the situation to happen. And that's for me to disengage my logic center and re-engage my heart center a little bit more and make sure that we focus on getting everybody a chance to get it out. Because no matter how many get it out, get your emotions out. My mom's here, your mom's here, my daughter's here, the auntie's here, everybody's crying. It's not gonna affect me that much because by the end of everybody being done, I'm gonna go, everybody good? Okay, now we're gonna move forward now, right? All right. Well, when we're turning around now, we're gonna focus our attention. Because we focused our attention here now. We're good now, right? Now we got to focus our attention on what we're gonna do about it because we can't stay here.
But
And
yeah,
that's usually when people can hear it after they've had a chance to be heard.
but okay, but think about this. Yes, you're moving forward, but nothing necessary for survival can we do once. Our heart can't beat once. We can't take one breath. We can't eat once.
Yeah.
But we're still moving forward. We're still growing,
Yeah.
right? We're still getting older.
That's a good way of
But
looking
we
at it.
have to continue to do those things
That's a good way of looking at it.
in order to, if we stop eating, eventually we ain't gonna be growing no more.
Eventually everything's gonna stop. You hear me?
Saying. And so when you break it down to that practical sense of, yeah, it's frustrating and I want to say it once. And that's not to negate what you're saying or to discredit, I should say, what you're saying, because I see the frustration in what you're saying. But that's survival.
Yeah. No,
That's how we make it to 14 years.
Which is the other side of it, because if the world existed purely on logic, we'd all destroy each other.
We would
And if we all
destroy each other.
lived just purely on emotion, it would be pure chaos.
Is that movie, where there's no rules for a day?
Oh, well, The Purge?
The Purge.
Woo!
Yeah,
Chaos.
that's a movie. We
So all I'm saying is it's either chaos or destruction. You need a good right. If you meet in the middle,
each other.
you have balance and
Right.
harmony.
Right.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
what it
No,
is.
I understand your point. Like, you're like, "Okay, we said this, let's move on." But you gotta think that's not survival.
It's not, and that's my point is we will logic ourselves, men will logic ourselves right off a cliff,
Facts.
because that is how logic works. It is the downside of logic. We can logic ourselves right off a cliff. No, but we'll fly because we created wings and we attenuated to the wingspan, and then we jump off, we didn't test it, and boom, we're dead. That's how this works.
And then if you survive, you'll get up and do
And
it
then
again.
right,
'Cause
exactly. No, we
so
just
it's
didn't do it right. But
we gotta do it. We need
or
the
or we'll
wingspan.
watch guy A fall off the cliff and go, well, he just didn't do it right. We're gonna go back and try this again. Don't worry about him. He's stupid anyway. He didn't need to be on the same. We got this, guys. Come on, let's go. We will logic ourselves into the silliest situations.
Yeah,
But we can't run purely on emotion either, because then it's just pure chaos. It's bedlam. Everybody's feeling everything,
right.
and
You do one
you're
thing and
taking
it goes
actions
yep,
based permanent
goes beyond
actions based on
emotion.
temporary
Yeah.
emotions. And now you regret. There's a lot of regret that lives there.
You're
That was
spiraling.
yeah,
I mean, right.
chaos.
You need that balance, babe.
It's
That
in the balance.
y'all, that's a word.
It's
It's
in the
all in
balance.
the balance of it. Catch us, on our YouTube channel, Two Average People.
Make sure you hit that like button. We really need it. It really brings a lot of support to us when you hit that like button, when you leave a comment, when you share the material, because we're having these conversations. We know you're having these conversations,
Yeah.
the real life ones, not the ones that go, women are suck, men suck. Not those conversations, the ones that actually bring us together and actually, help us, not just entertain us.
And we got a lot of things coming, y'all. Now I know we are in the midst of revamping the show, as you can see. We've done some things. We got some
Done some things different.
we got exciting things coming up for y'all. We're gonna have some people on the show. If you are interested in coming to chat with us, please hit us up. You know how to get in touch with us.
Mhm.
Write us on
Yep.
um,
Hit us up in the IG. That's where it all goes down for the
Yep.
most part.
Yep. And we will schedule a date. We got some it's gonna be exciting, y'all. So stay tuned. We're so excited. All right.
All
But
right
until
now.
then, remember, we're better
Together.
together. Peace, y'all.